Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel, OG Stars. And today we are going to cover this article from Screen Rant, why Rey Skywalker was the only way Star Wars could have ended. And so basically the saga could have ended. Now, you see streaming below, I choose Legends and thank you Star Wars. So I'm going to do a disclaimer here for the whole month of May. I am going to, celebrate Star Wars, or George Lucas's Star Wars. He is the maker, thank the maker. Basically, I am not celebrating the hashtag May the 4th due to, Disney Lucasfilm trying to copyright claim it. And then a commercial that I've been seeing on various channels that are showing the trilogies. And basically that commercial is to advertise Disney Plus and the fact that they are releasing the Rise of Skywalker today, among like the Mandalorian documentary trailer thing that they're doing. I have not checked out what that's about. So at the end of that commercial, what they say is basically, if you don't support us and you don't support the hashtag, you are not a Star Wars fan. So that really pissed me off, and I don't like gatekeeping. I understand we're all gonna love something about Star Wars, whether it's Disney Star Wars, George Lucas era, or something in between. So I think that really furthers divide fans and further still creates that stigma between what is better and what is not and all that. So that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the article here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not going to read the article entirely because I've done that already, and there's a lot in there. I'm going to point out some stuff here and give my compare and contrast between what George Lucas gave them as story treatments, what they could have done, and also compare and contrast with the Dark Empire. So here we go. Let's check out this article here. So basically we have Rey. They couldn't have end Star Wars or made a better ending without giving Rey the Skywalker name. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker ended with Rey claiming the Skywalker surname, and it was the best decision Lucasfilm could have made. This article is by Thomas Bacon, and he's been doing a lot of articles lately that I've covered pertaining to Star Wars and the junior novelization and stuff. And you can catch those videos on my channel. And there's a couple of them that are underneath his name from Screen Rant that I covered. So Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, Rey Skywalker's twist is the only way the Star Wars saga could have ended when Disney acquired Lucasfilm. The studio had high hopes for the sequel trilogy. Unfortunately, the Star Wars Last Jedi divided the fan base, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker has proved controversial as well. So basically, yes, the Last Jedi did divide the fan base. More than over half the fan base for the direction they took Luke Skywalker and the story and contradicted the past trilogies. Then we get Rise of Skywalker, and they try to retcon some of the Last Jedi, which is bad because you're having this trilogy. All three of these movies are supposed to support each other and create a strong foundation just within their trilogy. So they get Rise of Skywalker retcons some of the Last Jedi, and then also goes against the whole entire foundation of the 6 movies. And I won't go into more details about that, but that's just what I have observed and have pointed out in the past. Critics have focused particularly on the closing scene in which Rey visits the desert world of Tatooine and claims the Skywalker surname. No doubt Lucasfilm hoped this would be a powerful end to the Star Wars saga, but sadly, the execution didn't quite work. It did not work whatsoever. There was no indication throughout the whole trilogy that, they really mentored Rey in a sense to really impact her. In fact, Luke was basically, I don't want to train you, get the hell off my island kind of deal. And then so again, Rise of Skywalker retcons Luke to now being accepting of her. And so that's why it's starting to fall short. And then in Disney canon, we have Leia in Bloodlines refusing training, that she wants to basically focus on her political career and all this, and she doesn't want nothing to do with the Force. Luke did give her some basic, telekinesis kind of things on like just reaching into the Force and feeling things basically, but that's it. No indication of anything of her building a lightsaber. And Bloodlines is about 28 ABY, And then we have, so very close to the trilogy here. And then we have the Rise of Skywalker retconning that, saying that throughout her time frame from her discovering she's a Skywalker until then, that she was being trained by Force ghosts, and also Luke as well, even though in the Bloodlines novelization during 28 ABY, she did not want to be trained whatsoever. And so again, there is a contradiction in their own story as well. Oddly enough, though, these criticisms really aren't fair. The Rey Skywalker scene is an effective cap to the entire story, and it fulfills a lot of the franchise's most important themes. It is true that in execution, it would have been done a lot better, but the concept was sound and there was probably no better way to end the story. Basically, yes, there was a much better way to end the story. From what I got from the stretch of it all, that she was a nobody waiting for her parents. She was excited to have her parents and have her family back. And she basically, that was her arc right there. So, and then another theme of theirs that I noticed is that you can accomplish big things while being a nobody. So if they kept her a nobody and focused on Ben Solo's arc more strongly than they have, they would have had their Skywalker at the end of the saga, and they would have had made their point with Rey nobody accomplishing something greater. Even now that we know that she's a Palpatine, she would have still accomplished something greater and show that a Palpatine can truly be on the light side as well. That is much more phenomenal than, going and usurping a name and a family's legacy as your own, instead of creating your own. And that's a huge difference. You rather want to create your own legacy instead of usurping someone else's and their name. And so I think this is a wrong message that they're doing in this trilogy. Lucasfilm recently published The Art of Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and it included a transcript from a meeting of the Lucasfilm Story Group back in 2014. In it, they openly discussed the end of Rey's story, and already they considered having her claim a Skywalker surname, the Skywalker surname. I like the idea that she's going to be our Skywalker, but she's not a Skywalker, Pablo Hidalgo notes. Then for our purpose, the Skywalker is really a metaphor. It doesn't have to be something that directly connected to blood. And so there I go back to that point I just made. Instead of usurping a name to make yourself significant and your arc and your hero's journey, while she really didn't have one, but doing something great and significant, making your own name is much more better than claiming someone's name and legacy. It doesn't work that way. You make your own name, you make your own legacy. And in fact, Luke Skywalker, even though, his father made a good name for himself in the Clone Wars, as he turned and people found out, and I'm comparing and contrasting with Legends and the new stories, the new lore, is basically Luke had to come back and build that name up in a sense. Build that name back up into a better public viewing, a public light. And he did it significantly well, but it was his own name as well. He did not go and adopt the name. That's not how this works. While it's true that Lucasfilm has often claimed to have things planned in advance when they were making it up as they go, a habit they picked from George Lucas himself. So they're using George Lucas as an excuse for not really having anything planned. But when you go look back at George, he basically had, a story in mind. And as he created the story, some things were changed up, but there was always something in mind that he was planning on. And that's common for a storyteller to do that, to have something in mind, have ideas written down on paper, and deciding as you go along, it's more better to do it this way. It's more effective for the story this way, to have the story evolve in this manner. With them and in their interviews, they're like, oh, we have nothing in mind. And we, in fact, see Kathleen Kennedy basically saying that Rise of Skywalker means nothing. So there's no significance to it. And I'm paraphrasing. The idea is actually clearly foreshadowing in The Force Awakens. One of the core themes in Star Wars, the Force Awakens, is Rey's quest of self-identity. She is not on a quest for self-identity. She's on the quest of waiting for her parents and wanting her family. That's not necessarily self-identity. It's basically waiting for your family who had dropped you off, supposedly, and waiting for them to come back. So she's not really too worried until we get Last Jedi's retcon in The Force Awakens. She's not worried about self-identity and more so than waiting for her parents to come back. So that's a huge difference. This is why Rey doesn't have a surname. It is a symbol of her lack of identity, indicated her desperate need to belong, and not necessarily, again, she was waiting for her family to come back in The Force Awakens. And when we see that flashback scene, that Force Vision scene, we understand that she's young enough to basically know her parents, but not really remember what the last name may be or may or not be. So that's why the fans were excited, waiting to figure out who her parents were, not who who she was as an individual, or seeing that searching for her identity. We're waiting for her to, for her parents to be revealed. And, of course, there was a speculations. It could be Han and Leia. It could be Luke Skywalker, even Obi-Wan and even Palpatine. So we have that. So we get into the lightsaber thing. And so I kind of recapped on that. So let's scroll down here. Maz Kanata may have encouraged Rey to focus on her future rather than her past, but audiences were just as interested in questioning of where the Jakku scavenger had come from. Yeah, and that's the thing. We see that her supposedly at the time parents dropped her off and left her with on Jakku and stuff, and that she is waiting. It fell to Rian Johnson to answer these questions in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and he chose to reveal Rey was simply a nobody. So we get into the nobody arc. Your parents were filthy junk traders, Kylo Ren told her, who sold you off for drinking money. They are dead in a pauper's grave in Jakku Desert. Essentially, Kylo Ren served the same purpose as Maz Kanata in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, albeit more forcefully and with a very different agenda. He told Rey she could not have been defined by her past. Indeed, she had no past to be defined by. And basically, I think that's kind of bullshit, because her past was that her parents left her. And said that, they'll be back for her, basically. And that's what she was waiting on. And so even if you don't remember your last name, that doesn't mean you're not a nobody. And even if you can't remember because you're so young, that doesn't mean you're a nobody. He told Rey she could not be defined by her past. Indeed, she had no past to be defined by, and instead must choose her destiny. This perfectly sets up the idea of Rey becoming a Skywalker by choice, the one who brings balance to the Force. And there we go, keyword. So she usurps the Skywalker name, who the Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker is the chosen one. So now they're saying because she chose it, she also brings balance to the Force. Again, showing that she's taking the chosen one arc as well. So let's scroll down here to the comment that is left by the author of Rise of Skywalker. George Lucas, and I'm going to read this right here as well. George Lucas famously said Star Wars should be like a poetry, and indeed there is something so very poetic in the idea that Rey becoming a Skywalker. There's nothing poetic about it because we've never seen that before. We've only seen Skywalkers by blood, so there's nothing to reflect that on. Usurping a name and someone's legacy is not It's not poetry. It's not poetic. And when George Lucas talks about this, it's like poetry. It rhymes. Basically, what he's talking about is the nods between both trilogies he created, and between the families, like when you see Luke doing the lightsaber salute before in the beginning of Return of the Jedi, when they're going to get executed by Jabba the Hutt, we also see similarities with Anakin doing the same thing. That's nods between the two as father and son. There's significant reasons why there is these little nods of poetry, I guess you can say. This does not make sense as poetry whatsoever. So basically the author says it fits perfectly with the long-standing Star Wars theme of family. And again, she's not family. I just said that. It mirrors Luke's journey to become a Jedi Knight. No, it doesn't. She doesn't even get training as a Jedi Knight. They basically did a soft reboot of the original trilogy, yet she has no relation to them whatsoever. No blood relationship, no relationship whatsoever. And it corresponds with a hero's journey trope, and she does not have the hero's journey trope. And maybe one day I will basically do a video on comparing Luke's hero's journey to the supposedly one of Rey, which nothing's there. She's a Mary Sue. There's no hero's journey for Mary Sue, or she would be called a Mary Sue. And novelist Rae Carson, there's her name, and I knew it was something like that. I can care less about her, but it's Rae Carson who penned the novelization of Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, pointed to another layer opened up by the idea of a Palpatine becoming a Skywalker. And again, so this is the rise of Palpatine. This basically shares that the Palpatine has won in the end, that he has overcome. Even though he's not ruler, his blood, or he is not ruler, his blood has infiltrated into the Skywalker legacy. Even though she's good or on the light side, which I question still because she had no training, he still won by overcoming the family. My current take is this: the entire Skywalker saga is about Palpatine trying to turn the Skywalkers to the dark side. Nope. The entire saga of the Skywalker family basically is the rise and fall of Darth Vader. And Palpatine basically is a tool to that. And he is brilliant enough and a mastermind to create the wars, both sides of the war, to gain control of the galaxy. And in that journey, he takes the chosen one and manipulates them and turns them to Darth Vader. And then we see in the OT that Darth Vader is the antagonist, and that he eventually gets redeemed. It's not about turning the Skywalkers to the dark side. He's only done that with Anakin, and yes, he's tried that with Luke Skywalker, but it's not, the initial story is not about him. It's about Anakin Skywalker and his son, and their interaction with the galaxy on creating balance and structure and peace and overcoming the overall evil. He especially hopes that Rey will prove a worthy vessel for his own power and ambition and become the Skywalker's final downfall. And again, she is. And just because she's on the light side, she's still a Palpatine. And so she still infiltrates the family and still in this logic, still overcomes the family and usurps the name and the legacy. But in spite of all his efforts over her course of 3 generations, he fails. Not like I said, again, that's not about Palpatine turning the Skywalkers to the dark side. Now, is this the way Disney's taking the trilogy and redoing the trilogies now? Possibly, because this theory that comes from Rae Carson is also put into her books. She has to talk about this with the story group. So then this gives us an idea on where they're taking and how we're going to redo the 6 movies. In the end, it's a Palpatine who turns to the light, thus handing the Skywalker their ultimate victory. And again, I disagree with that. Basically, she usurps the name and usurps their legacy. A Palpatine basically usurps the Skywalker name and usurps their legacy. I don't say that's a victory for the Skywalkers. I say that's a victory for the Palpatine. In truth, whatever twists and turns the sequel trilogy took, Rey Skywalker was always the logical conclusion. It's true the execution was poor, thus inviting criticism in the concept of profound and powerful. That is profound and powerful for all it has been handled badly. There was no better way for the Star Wars saga to end. And so we'll go further on that on their theory that there's no better way the Skywalker could have ended. And one of them is dun dun dun. They threw away George Lucas's treatments that he gave them to do a Skywalker, the sequel trilogy. So he took that, or they took that. Bob Iger even admits it in his little biography novel that he did, and basically said they betrayed George Lucas and threw away the story treatments. So there they have nothing to nothing to go by. And another option is that they could have used Ben Solo and kept him because he is the Skywalker by blood, and they could have used him to the best of his ability and still have a Skywalker involved. And lastly, in the Dark Empire, Luke went in to infiltrate Palpatine's secret base on Biss and learn more about the dark side, as well as defeat him from the inside. Leia had to help Luke overcome the dark side. So basically, she had to go in and help Luke overcome that. So basically helping him, and like there's a redemption arc in that, which was told by Leia in a holocron that she had during that time frame. And I don't have the information in front of me. I wish I could recite it. It's a beautiful piece of information and a prophecy for the twins. And we also have Han, who killed the last clone of the Emperors before he could transfer his essence into baby Anakin Solo. And from that, I'm going to point out the obvious. Han defeated the last clone of Palpatine, but did not take on the Skywalker name. And we have Rey defeated one of her father's clones. And yes, it is basically that's her father. And then she took on the Skywalker name. You don't have to usurp a name and a legacy to be significant. And I will, point that out. And I'll keep pointing that out. So think about it. One more thought. They could have used Ben Solo. And again, I'm going to cover this a little bit more to their advantage in the last, as the last Skywalker. And they could have went so many different ways with that, to where him and her, so Ben and Rey could have defeated her father and ended with that, instead of her usurping the name and the legacy. So I'm going to end with that. There was many different ways they could have gone. Instead of sharing with the new generations that it's okay to take someone's name and their legacy as your own. It's not okay. It's not a great example. What is more worthy to someone, no matter what your name is making a name for yourself. Think about that. Make a name for yourself. That has much more clout, much more weight, much more honor than usurping a name and their legacy as your own. Disney Star Wars wanted her as a nobody. They made her into a Palpatine. But just imagine if she would have kept the name Palpatine, or they would have kept her as a nobody, how much more weight that would be. How much more weight that would have lent to the story that a Palpatine is good now, that a Palpatine can be good and do good things, or a nobody can accomplish something greater than themselves. So I leave you with that. You guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you.